Hey YouTubers, this is Jacqui, and thanks for checking out my channel. I know you come to YouTube for video entertainment, and as a podcast, I don't provide any visuals, but wait, before you go, I want to remind you that there are times when listening to something is exactly what you need. I find podcasts are perfect when I'm going for a walk, doing dishes, folding laundry, or cleaning my toilet. Yes, even though I'm an award-winning podcaster, I still have to clean my own toilet. However, it goes faster with an escape. So when you are in the need for an audio distraction, my episodes will be here for you. Now on with the show. Ghoulish greetings, my friends. It is time for my second annual spooky story share for Halloween. Prepare yourself for 3 new eerie and mysterious tales of the great beyond. So find a nice dark spot, light a few candles, and get ready to settle in for some thrills and chills. Welcome to Jacqui Just Chatters. Thank you for joining me. I'm your hostess, Jacqui Lents, and I'm trying to make the world a little better, one story at a time. Whimsical episodes come out every other Tuesday. What's your story? If you've got one, reach out via my website. Now let's get chatting. I want to thank all those who submitted work for this year's episode. Alas, I can't use all of the stories. If you want to know more about the authors and their social media, I have them listed in the episode notes. I hope you go check them out. Would you like to send in a short story for one of my special episodes? Then make sure you sign up for my newsletter at my website, www.jacquilents.com, to find out what the new themes will be for 2025. Our first ghostly tale comes from Samantha Garvey. She earned her MA in English from Georgia State University, where she has also spent time teaching and working in the campus writing studio. When she's not writing, she can be found hanging out with her husband, dog, and 2 totally normal, not ghostly at all cats. Her creative work has been published on Faith, Hope, and Fiction. You can also find her on Substack. The Calico Cat. Savannah sat up in bed. A cold chill came over her as sweat formed at the nape of her neck. Her heart rate began to come back to its senses as she held her forehead in her hand. The cry seemed even closer this time. Just after she moved into the apartment a few weeks ago, Savannah had asked her neighbor Laura about the cat that cries out in the middle of the night. Cat? Laura wrinkled her forehead as if Savannah had mentioned a ghost. Laura knew everything about everything in the complex. If she didn't know about the cat, it was safe to say that there was no cat. Savannah tried to dismiss it all as a dream. The end of September brought about the first of 3 major writing assignments for her college students. After finishing up her last class of the day, Savannah started her 2-block journey from campus back to her apartment. Leaves twirled around her as they fell to the sidewalk. As usual, the chilly morning air had faded under the warmth of the sun, causing her to shed the black sweater she wore every day. Inside her apartment, Savannah tossed her sweater on the back of the small dining table chair and set a pot of coffee to brew. Laura came over as promised to help her with unboxing and organizing more books. They talked and sipped coffee until Laura's husband, Greg, got home. "Wow!" Savannah's shriek caused Laura to jump. "What? What?" Laura strained her head around the doorway to find what Savannah was seeing. The calico that had been right in front of the door vanished. "How was that possible?" Savannah said to herself. "It was just right there." "Your cat?" Laura smirked. "I think you need to get some rest, honey." She cupped Savannah's cheek as she bid her goodnight and left her standing in the entryway. Back inside, Savannah poured another cup of leftover coffee and settled cross-legged on her small couch. The light from the street lamps kept her front window just bright enough to help her keep watch for the calico cat. Her students' papers lay in 2 piles in front of her, graded and not yet. One lonesome paper lay in the graded pile. Savannah sighed, "I love my job. I love my job." Clanking of metal against glass woke her. The empty mug that had been on the edge of the coffee table now lay on the carpet. Savannah stretched the sleep away and set the paper she had been clutching down in a new pile dubbed, "I'm trying." Standing to further shake the sleep away, she reached for the string to close the front window blinds. Looking at the moon, she was sure it had to be midnight or later. She read the clock. Just past 9. Savannah grabbed the mug and spoon from the floor and went to squeeze one last cup from the pot. She placed the last of the 30 papers face down on the graded pile when the clock finally read midnight. Tomorrow, she'd have another 30. The next day, 30 more. But for now, she crawled into bed without even bothering to change into her pajamas. Glass falling to the floor woke her. She looked over at the clock. 2:47 a.m. This time the noise came from the kitchen. Had she left the window open? She hadn't opened it to begin with. Had she? Reluctantly, Savannah sat up and reached for the baseball bat she kept between her bed and bedside table. Without breathing, she inched her feet to the doorway of the bedroom, praying all the way and holding the bat over her shoulder. In a flash of make-believe bravery, she pounced through the door and pushed the light switch so hard she thought she'd torn it off the wall. The bat stayed above her shoulder as she surveyed the now illuminated apartment. No one. She checked the kitchen window, locked and secured, though now her sock was wet. Looking down, she saw her mug with a new split down the side lying on the floor. The little bit of coffee she hadn't finished puddled around it. How did that happen? She thought as she reached for a paper towel. How did that happen? She said out loud this time. The roll of paper towels on the counter had been mangled, chewed, clawed, unraveled down to the floor. Savannah pulled her hand back as if she had touched an open flame. Mice, she thought? Big rats. She panicked. Walking backwards with the bat dangling at her side, she stepped on her sweater, which had also been pulled to the floor. Her pace quickened to a run. She slammed and locked the bedroom door and waited out the night. Aching from her sleepless night, Savannah thought briefly about canceling her classes for the day, but instead she cautiously unlocked her bedroom door and started her morning routine. In the kitchen, she picked her coffee mug and spoon from the floor and tossed the roll of paper towels in the trash. Thinking better of it, she quickly pulled the paper towels back out so she would have evidence of the rats for the manager. Savannah grabbed her sweater from the floor on her way out the door. As she started to put it on, the morning light glistened off a patch of fur that appeared to be etched on the back side. Irritated and disgusted, she squirmed her arm out of the sleeve and shoved the sweater in her bag. "I'm so sorry, dear." Dolores, the kind manager of the complex, attempted to soothe Savannah's fears as she met her that afternoon and recounted her story of last night. "See?" Savannah pulled the sweater from her bag in a grand finale fashion. Spreading it on the table, she looked closely for the patch of fur she'd seen this morning. Dolores followed Savannah's lead and ran her fingers over the sweater to help search. Nothing. Redness flooded Savannah's cheeks with embarrassment. "Where is it?" Savannah was close to tears. "Perhaps it rubbed off in your bag," Dolores offered with a motherly smile. She promised that the head of maintenance would be over as quickly as possible to check things out. Savannah nodded and started towards the apartment. Still wiping the sleep from her eyes, she stopped at the flower bed in front of the building to grab her keys from her bag. Looking back up, she stopped cold. "You!" she breathed. The green eyes of the calico cat from last night stared up at her from behind one of the pumpkins in the flower bed. A most vibrant mix of brown, black, white, and orange swirled throughout its long fur. One of its legs was a solid orange. She felt a pang of sadness come over her as she suddenly heard the cries of the cat in her dream. A tear fell from her cheek, and she hurried to the door. Jerry, the head of maintenance, showed up just as Dolores had promised. After inspection, he reported no signs of pests, but still offered to place traps as a precaution. Feeling deflated, Savannah reached for the roll of paper towels she'd saved as evidence. Only now, it was once again tightly rolled and damage-free. Her face grew flush again. A thought suddenly came to her. "Jerry," she blurted out, and stopped him just as he was leaving. "Have you ever seen the calico cat that hangs out around here?" Jerry's eyebrows raised. He looked at the roll of paper towels in Savannah's hands and shook his head. "No cats around here, Miss Savannah. At least not since the old man that used to live in here hasn't been here." Savannah knew that Mr. Sanders, the man who had the apartment before her, had died here. His cat, however, was news to her. "So there was a cat here before?" Savannah pressed. "Oh, yeah. Sweet little thing. Followed him everywhere. But I haven't seen her in a long time." Jerry's smile turned down slightly as he reached again for the door. Savannah thanked him and let him go. That night, Savannah sat with the new stack of 30 papers to be graded. As she sipped her coffee and worked through each page she replayed the night before. Had she dreamed of the chewed-up paper towels and the fur patch on the sweater? How did that explain the mug that was still broken? Writing it off as exhaustion, Savannah finished up the last paper and headed for bed. Scratch, 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 scratch. Meow. Savannah sat up straight and reached for the baseball bat. 2:09 a.m. There was something clawing at one of the windows. Again, Savannah crept slowly to the living room and pounced the light on. She scanned the room. Everything appeared in order. Kitchen checked out too. No fallen teacups or unrolled paper towels. She turned to head back to bed. "Oh, jeez!" She jumped back and dropped the bat on the floor. 2 green eyes stared at her from the outside sill. Though the rest of it was camouflaged by the night, Savannah knew those eyes belonged to the calico cat. She blinked, and the cat vanished. Convinced she was dreaming, she blinked again to try to wake herself up before going back to bed and locking the bedroom door behind her. The next day, Savannah sat with Laura on the bench in the park behind their building and told her about the coffee mug and the paper towels and the sweater. Laura frowned. "Oh, honey, maybe you should try switching to decaf." "So you've never seen a calico cat here?" Savannah finally asked bluntly. Laura's eyes widened as if Savannah had finally jogged a long-lost memory. "Not since," Laura trailed off. "What's that mean?" Savannah tried to hide her annoyance. "Well, you know Mr. Sanders, the man who lived in your apartment before you." "And died there." Savannah grinned with the power of an inside joke. Yes, yes. Laura didn't like talking about that part. "He had a calico cat. Her name was Sadie. That cat followed him everywhere." Savannah leaned forward as Laura's words were almost the exact ones Jerry had used the day before. Laura sighed and continued. "It was Sadie who alerted us that something was wrong with Mr. Sanders. By the time the paramedics got here, it was too late." Laura wiped a tear from her cheek. "What happened to her?" Savannah lamented the grief of the cat. "Poor Sadie roamed back and forth, waiting for him to come back. Greg and I tried to take her in, but she wasn't having it. She just sat at his door day and night, crying and pining herself away." Laura paused again. "Crying." Savannah's eyes widened. "One morning," Laura continued, "I greeted Sadie, but she didn't look up at me. Then I noticed she wasn't breathing. I called for Greg." Laura tried to shake off the memory. "Poor thing, mourned herself to death." Laura pointed to the woods just across from the bench. That was where they'd buried Sadie. Savannah couldn't stop the tears from rolling down her own cheeks now. Savannah wiped her cheeks with the sleeve of her sweater. "But there are no other calico cats here." "None that I know of," Laura grinned through her tears. "Except the one in your dreams." Later, when she was alone, Savannah thought more about Sadie and Mr. Sanders. If there had been another cat hanging around, Laura would have noticed. Another thought threatened to form, but she shooed it off. Attempting to rub away the headache in her temple, she settled in for another round of grading papers. 2:08 a.m. Savannah felt a weight at her feet. Still half asleep, she kicked it. Thud. Savannah jolted up, nearly knocking the lamp from the table as she hurried to switch it on. Pulling her legs up so she could roll herself into a ball, she scanned the floor around the bed. Nothing. She leaned over just enough to see into the living room and kitchen. Nothing. Finally, she grabbed the baseball bat and slowly let her feet down. She screamed. Savannah's heart threatened to beat out of her chest. She fell back onto the bed. The calico cat sat staring at her from the doorway of the bedroom. What? How? She couldn't get the question out of the way. The cat just stared, its green eyes harboring memories from a lifetime ago. Savannah could feel the pain of the cat's realization that whatever it was longing for wasn't there anymore. With a blink, the cat disappeared the same way it had the night before from the windowsill. Savannah reached to the spot at her feet where the cat had been laying. It was still warm. The next day, she decided to look around the neighborhood for signs of the calico cat. Eventually, she came to the place where Greg and Laura had buried Sadie. The little ceramic cat that Laura had placed on top was itself buried by all the fallen leaves. Savannah pulled it up and brushed the top of the little grave with her hand. Poor Sadie, she cried as the leaves crunched under her swipes. A few nights passed without any interruption. Strangely, Savannah started to miss the calico cat. "Anything new from your cat?" Laura asked one day as she met Savannah for lunch. Savannah shook her head, trying again to shoo away the thought that had been forming since she'd last seen the cat. Against her better judgment, she decided to entertain it. "Laura, did Sadie have one orange leg?" Laura raised her eyes as if trying to conjure up a picture of Sadie in her mind. "Yes," she finally agreed. "How did you know that?" Savannah smiled. That night, Savannah felt a weight again at her feet. This time it was purring. She looked at the clock. 2:13 a.m. Carefully, Savannah twisted herself around to switch on the lamp. The calico cat lay sleeping at the end of her bed. She watched for a few moments before the cat's eyes opened to stare back at her. "It's okay, Sadie. You can stay as long as you like." Savannah and the calico cat both settled back down to sleep. Canadian author Judith Johansson gives us our second offering. She is a former teacher, school librarian, and an assistant to a speech pathologist. Johansson is also a mother of 3 and grandmother of 5. She is a writer of both poetry and prose. Her poetry has appeared in several magazines, and she published a collection of her poems titled Intersections. All Hallows Eve. With careful steps, hovering just above the moonlit grass, she descended the low hill above the sleeping village. Her pale green dress left patterns in the frost, and her red hair fell gently to her shoulders. No lights escaped the village's shuttered windows on this night, when the veil thinned and no one knew what might walk the lanes under the hunter's moon. She had waited, it seemed, long years to return. But time beyond was not as the human time she had once known, with hours, days, and years, followed in measured steps. This night, however, she was drawn back to the place where she had lived and died, young and unfulfilled, leaving behind a lover waiting. Had he waited, she wondered? Had he found another lover? A sudden noise surprised her as a door quietly, secretly closed, and she saw a dark figure emerge from beyond a tall gate below her. Lightly and unseen, she stepped further down the hill, watching the form draw nearer. It was a man, walking slowly with a stout cane. Bent he was, wrapped in a dark coat and heading towards the small graveyard at the foot of the hill. When he reached the gates, she saw that he was carrying a sheaf of russet leaves as he moved towards a rough stone where he knelt and laid his gift. Knobby hands caressed the single word engraved there, the single name, Eileen. Still kneeling, the man leaned forward, grasping the stone in his arms before falling to the frosted grass. Swiftly then she came and placed her hand upon his head. "Tom," her voice soft, "you've waited through the years. Now it is time to come with me. Take my hand." She reached out, took his hand in hers, and he rose, young and smiling from his old body. They then walked up the hill and through the vale into the summerland long promised. I hope you are enjoying this episode of Jacqui Just Chatters. I would like more people to join our community here, and you can help. Most people learn about podcasts from word of mouth, so tell your friends or post about the program on your social media. Also, shows with more positive reviews and 5-star ratings get wider promotion on apps. Leaving a quick 5 stars or mentioning why you like the show makes a difference. Together we can spread those positive vibes. Thanks again for listening. I'm grateful for you. Now back to the show. Our final tale comes from Cory Laniewski. He is a chef by trade and writes in his spare time. He is happily married with 2 cats. This year he released his first novel, Before the Shadows, and is working on another. Cory enjoys hiking, board and card games. So do I, Cory. And can be found wearing a Hawaiian shirt any time of year. I applaud your style. Cul-de-sac. Tim, just let it go. Come on. If the killer finds it and us standing here, then he'll come to our houses and we're all dead meat. It's got my name on it. That's my point, Kevin yelled as he tried to stifle his voice's volume. The 2 boys stood just beyond the flaking picket fence, knee-deep in the overgrown field that surrounded Old Man Kelly's house. Various burr weeds jutted from within the dense foliage that had remained undisturbed and free to grow as it pleased. 4 years of vacancy allowed the property and surrounding land at the back end of Pancoast Court to fall into disarray. It was the perfect backdrop for the rumors to spread alongside the brush. As the waning sun ducked behind the cul-de-sac's cozy houses, silhouettes stretched toward the decrepit building, which nearly fell apart in front of the boys. Boards hung loose from the siding, shingles would slide off during the faintest of rainfalls, and the front porch sat crooked, slouching more with each passing summer. Even the shutters from every window lay shattered upon the ground, with only 2 remaining, barely holding fast to a second-floor, forward-facing window outlooking the dead-end road. Rumors spread by the children of the neighborhood as to why the old house was abandoned. Some had said that the old man just disappeared one day without a trace. Others claimed that he was ill and passed away quietly. The wildest by far, and the most believed by the other kids, told of a hitchhiker that old Ron Kelly killed and hid inside his house. Some even claimed that on nights where someone would sneak in, the house's only 2 shutters left would close tight and wouldn't open until just before daybreak. There were some children that would wait up, risking punishment from their parents, just to see if the rumors were true. Tim and Kevin were never so brave. "The guy doesn't know what we look like, so maybe we'll be safe if we just get out of here fast." "It'll be quick," Tim said shakily. "We go in, find my baseball." "But what if someone catches us?" "Nobody is gonna know." "Killer will!" Kevin exclaimed louder than he felt he should have. "Nobody's seen nothing in years, and Derek and Samantha said they saw a guy running around with a hook just last week. He was on the second floor. Tim, for the first time since walking up to the fence, turned to face his best friend. He flicked Kevin's arm and said, "They say stuff to get everyone to like them. The stories are crap, and nobody really thinks the killer is here. He probably left town a long time ago. And if he is here, how come the cops haven't found him, huh? Think my uncle can't search a house?" "I didn't say that," Kevin responded sheepishly, his eyes wandering past the open field. "My uncle searched that house top to bottom, and his guys didn't find anyone. I even heard they brought in the canines. If he says it's empty, then it's empty." Tim turned back on the house and nervously studied the windows. "There's definitely nobody in there. You can come with me or stay out here." "You're seriously going in there?" Kevin asked. "I gotta go in and get it. All for a stupid signature?" Without another word, Tim nestled his foot onto a cross-section of the rickety fence and hoisted his smaller frame over the other side. "A burdock just got me in the ass," Kevin mumbled as he too climbed over the barrier. Kevin picked the small spiky nodule from his pants before he stepped up to his friend's side. The young boys stood in awe for a minute as they marked a new chapter in their lives. This had been the closest either of them had ever been to the Kelly house. The moment was taken in, and for a split second, they both felt brave. Still cautious, but confident enough to step forward. Tim and Kevin took their first few steps towards the front of the house. Unkempt hedges towered over 6 feet tall and encircled the house in somewhat uneven rows. The shrubbery swayed and leaned into the cul-de-sac, rustling ceaselessly despite the weak wind gusts. Tinier bushes had sprung up throughout the lawn, and invasive plants spread from the once well-manicured property and became the common feature of the lawn. An old path had since disappeared behind the greenery. Only halfway to the front porch, both boys stopped when a car rolled down the street. They ducked behind the hedges and peered towards the road. The street lamps flickered to life and picked out the vehicle as it slowly moved toward the end of the cul-de-sac. Tim was the first to notice the badge painted on the driver's side door. He turned and ran for the rear of the house while Kevin froze in place. Withered tree saplings and vines caught Tim as he brushed through the overgrowth, barely making it to the back of the building when the spotlight flashed toward the house. Out of breath and with thoughts racing, Tim rested his back on the splintering wood, head tilted up to the sky. "Where's Kevin?" his mind screamed. Tim leaned his body halfway beyond the edge of the house and spotted his friend, still crouched behind the hedges. He hadn't moved a muscle. Tim watched as the officer's light panned across the face of the old Kelly house and made its way to the bushes. It hopped from one to the other. Did somebody call the cops? Tim thought. Someone did notice us. He yelled as loud as he could in his hushed tone and hoped the officer's windows were closed. "Kev, come on! You gotta get over here right now!" His friend shook his head, matching what his body had been doing the entire time. He didn't budge from behind the hedge. Tim tried to make out the numbers on the side of the squad car and gasped. "Uncle Mitch!" He crowded along the edge of the old house and waved to his friend, who continued his refusal to budge. "Just don't do anything, and Mitch won't catch you," Tim said. "I'm getting my ball, then we can run for it." If Tim had taken the time to glance back at his friend, he would have seen the look of shock spread across his face. "He's going in by himself," Kevin murmured. "Mitch is here? My parents are gonna kill me." Tim reached the far side of the house where a small vestibule rested and served as a back entryway. It was rarely closed and often swung freely in the wind. Children from the neighborhood would sneak up to the house's fence and watch from the fields, guessing at what or who kept the door from closing. Tim assumed that the decaying structure was a great reason why nobody wanted to buy the vacant plots on either side of the Kelly house. The tales of a killer were the main reason, though. This he knew. The floorboards shifted and groaned with every step that Tim attempted to keep silent. Despite the noise, he continued his stealthy approach to searching the house. He knew the ball had crashed through a second-story window, but he had never been inside the house. The layout was unfamiliar and peculiar. What remained of old Mr. Kelly's furniture was broken down, save a few larger items. A dining table had simply been turned on its side and shoved against one of the kitchen windows, and the fridge, though missing its door, remained relatively intact. Numerous piles of trash littered the floor as flies filled the surprisingly stagnant air. Despite the open door and broken windows, the house still had its musty air from when it was once inhabited. Tim shuffled through the house and eventually found the stairs to the second floor. It wasn't without difficulty, however, as he had to duck for cover as the police light frequently flashed through the windows. He wondered if Kevin still gripped the hedges, but he elected to avoid looking out the windows. Despite the appearance of the rest of the building, the stairs remained in proper condition. Tim followed them to the second floor without a noise. The upper level of the house was as broken down and eerie as the rest of it. Wallpaper peeled and hung loosely, and a strange fungus clung to the walls just beneath. What little light came in from outside highlighted the abounding filth. Tim had no idea which room held his ball, only that it was on the left side of the house. As he made his way down the hall, the squeak of a mouse made him turn abruptly. His breathing picked up. He caught a glimpse of its tail before it squeaked beneath the door. "It's cool, just a mouse." He thought briefly about how many mice might actually live inside the house. Maybe there's hundreds in the walls. Did they ever see anyone in here? Did they see old Mr. Kelly? His thoughts were cut short when something struck his back. Ow! Tim took several steps forward before he spun around. The hallway was just as empty as before, with the exception of his baseball. It had rolled into a groove in the floorboards just outside the last room on the left. Tim checked his surroundings and assumed the ball was what struck him. Without hesitation, Tim lunged for the ball, his footfalls no longer muted. When he reached it, his hand gripped tightly around the sphere. He turned his head just enough to peer into the room off to his left. The door came to a quick stop right before it opened. In the sliver of the remaining doorway, a shorter, raggedy old man was hunched over and peering through the crack. Tim's eyes grew wide as he watched the man raise one fine, withered finger to his dried lips. Between the man's crooked brown teeth came a hoarse "Shh." Tim's jaw dropped, and he could have sworn that he heard it hit the floor. Rats in a broken-down ghost house were hardly enough to handle, but a man hiding behind a door sent him sailing down the stairs. His feet hardly touched a board before he was out the front door. The officer's car was halfway down the street when Tim emerged from the dilapidated house. Kevin, who was still behind the same shrub, stood up from his fetal position and quickly made for his friend. While he ran, he checked over his shoulder to ensure the cop wasn't turning around. Tim had blown through the front gate when Kevin shouted, "Tim, what happened in there? I thought you were dead." Kevin pulled on Tim's shirt, and the two halted in the middle of the cul-de-sac. Both friends were out of breath. Tim from running, and Kevin from nerves. I saw someone. They were in a room," Tim gasped out. "You saw someone? Who?" They looked at each other, then abruptly faced the house. Tim spit on the ground. The taste in his mouth was acrid, and he thought of the house's air quality. He looked up the street and saw no signs of his uncle's vehicle. Kevin faced Tim and pulled at his shirt again. "Hey," Kevin yelled. "Did you get it?" "Huh? Did you get your ball back?" Tim looked down at his open hands. "I think I dropped it. I had the ball, but you were just supposed to get the ball and get out. How did you forget the—" Kevin paused. "I heard it too," Tim said while nodding. The two boys shifted their attention to the loud thumping coming from within the Kelly house. The door remained wide open and the sound echoed in the evening sky. It was an aggressive sound, wooden and something else. Heavy footsteps kept pace from the darkness beyond the front door. It took a few seconds before they could make out the hazy image of someone descending the stairs. Someone hit each stair as they walked. "We should go," Kevin whispered. He yanked on his friend's sleeve for the third time and created a slight tear on Tim's worn-out baseball jersey. The boys kept their eyes fixed on the front of the building as the figure crept nearer to the door. They felt the entire house creep closer to the sidewalk with each passing moment. The lawn they had just escaped from surrounded them once more. The tall grass brushed against ankles, burrs stuck to their pants, and the mice ran circles around the boys. This all came to a fierce halt when the door slammed shut before the old man could step outside. In the same instant, everything went back to normal. The house was where it was supposed to be. No mice ran around. Nothing hung from their clothing. And the street's pavement was safely beneath their feet. Tim and Kevin looked at one another in disbelief. "Did that house move?" Kevin asked. "I don't know," Tim answered. "What was that?" Nothing made sense to the boys, but what was perfectly clear was that Tim's baseball had bounced its way from the porch of the house over to them. They reached for it, but Kevin snagged it first. "No way," Tim said, his gaze upon the ball in his friend's hand. Kevin looked it over, then stared at a second-floor window. A man stood with his back turned to the outside world. He stood with purpose. He intended on being seen, not just seeing. Tim took the ball from Kevin's hand and chucked it, searching for any damage done. He rotated it, then whispered to himself, "No, he ruined it." "Huh? What?" Kevin choked up. The two boys looked over the ball and counted 3 names written on its surface. One signature had been crossed off and covered up by 2 letters. "Mine is here," Tim said, "and that used to be Uncle Mitch's name from his first home run in minor league." He squinted in the growing darkness. "But I can't read these letters." "Let me see." Kevin took the baseball and rushed under one of the lampposts. He waved over his friend without looking up. When Tim approached, he could see Kevin's eyes were wide. Tim took the ball and read out the letters. "RK. Those are Old Man Kelly's initials." "I thought he was missing," Kevin added. Their heads spun to the upper portion of the house as a loud bang resonated through the cul-de-sac. Tim and Kevin both shuddered before they sprinted away down the well-lit street in an effort to put as much distance between themselves and the old house whose second-floor shutters had just slammed tight. I want to thank again all of those who sent in stories and those of you who are listening to them. They only truly live when others are enjoying them. I appreciate you telling your friends about this podcast and spreading the love. This couldn't happen without you. You are wonderful and precious, just the way you are. Do you have a quick go-to easy Halloween costume? When in doubt, I throw on a green top, pin some ornaments to it, and go as a Christmas tree. I would love to hear from you. You can send me a message via Facebook or Instagram. Links are in the episode notes. Until next time, I wish you well.